Being at the farm is, I love it because it's always the same, but it's always different too. And it's a place where I settle into myself in a way that's different than anywhere else. When I started photographing in 1968, we weren't that far away from the great photographs of the Depression by my then idol, Dorothea Lange, and another photographer, Walker Evans, that I admired so much. So, so those photographers were the great inspirations for me. Anyway, I realized that while the relationships were important to me, making the pictures was the most important thing. And that's when I figured out that I needed to be a photographer. Well, I was always very bored with landscape photography. And I certainly was bored with the idea of doing it myself. It didn't interest me in the slightest. And then my friend Wes Jackson asked me to photographically record some survey work that he was doing on a nearby untouched prairie. It was that I suddenly saw the landscape as being a key to big questions about life, about art history, about how to make pictures. You know, the landscape moves just as much as the human face. There is a medieval saying about the universe, as above, so below. And so I thought maybe I could check that out. And that led to this interest in the aerial perspective that continues for me even now. I started photographing in the steel mills around Chicago, and that seemed to me at the time sort of strange. It didn't seem to fit in with anything else. But I started photographing them because I had seen them from the air, and the structures, the architecture I thought was fascinating and really quite beautiful. The specimen work it started when I was photographing the prairie from Canada to Texas, and I learned about the 19th century explorers who would go on the great Western expeditions and collect specimens of all kinds. They seemed to me like an extension of what I had done when I was looking at the ground and seeing all the diversity of an untouched ecosystem. The specimens represented the way we humans can understand an ecosystem. And so that's when I started using a 4x5 camera to better show these exquisitely mounted plant specimens and birds. And so the specimen work was a way to look deep into the history of the landscape. Matfield Green seemed to me to be full of stories. And I don't mean in a documentary way, although of course the place was interesting for its own sake and the people too. There were abandoned houses that seemed to contain whole lives in what had been left. So it is the most wonderful thing to have this opportunity to have this show at the Nelson Atkins, because the museum meant so much to me as a child. It comes from the deepest part of me. I just have to make pictures. And I like seeing how pictures work. I like seeing the world through a camera. I like framing an image. I like finding out what a photograph can do. It just has not ever stopped being the most compelling thing I could do.